Hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on wireless data loggers and trying to figure out if they're right for you and your application. My name is Jessica Freckleton. I'm the manager of the product marketing team here at Onset Computer, and I'm joined today by Scott Ellis, one of our product marketing specialists. Today we're going to take you through a brief company overview of Onset and then talk to you about our various data logging product families. We're going to jump right into the wireless sensor network by covering the features of the HOBO ZW series. And then Scott's going to take you through a live software overview and a demonstration of how to set up a network. I'm going to then walk you through some examples of the system pricing and a few applications that highlight how our customers have used this product. We're going to end the day with a question and answer session. Onset is the leader in portable data loggers. Our company was founded in 1981, so we're happy to be celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. We've got about 120 employees, all based in Bourne, Massachusetts, where we design and manufacture all of our products. We've sold over 1.5 million data loggers, which represents a great basis of experience. I wanted to talk to you today about our 3 data logging families. The way we describe our data loggers are by using the terms standalone data loggers, web-based data logging systems, and wireless sensor networks. We'll obviously spend the most time today on the wireless sensor network, but I wanted to set the basis by describing the differences in these 3 data logging families. First, the standalone data loggers are very simple and quick to deploy. These are USB-based loggers that you can walk up to, launch your logger, and offload the data with a connection to a computer through a USB port. They're very inexpensive, and they rely on just a simple, quick deployment to the field. Our web-based data logging systems are the data logging systems that allow you to view your data on the web. You can connect through these remote monitoring systems with a cellular, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet communication. We offer a wide range of wired, plug-and-play sensors, and you can even connect to other third-party sensors through various ports in the data logging systems. And remember, with this system, there's no need to go up to the logger to retrieve your data. You automatically receive data on the web. The loggers we're going to spend the most time on today are our wireless sensor networks. We call this product line our ZW series of data loggers. It allows for centralized data collection so you can have a broad reach across your building of data logging solutions without going to retrieve the data from the logger directly. There's no manual offload because the wireless nodes communicate with each other and gather data back to the central location. Our technology is based on a property that allows for a self-healing network. And the product itself is managed through our flagship software, HOBO Pro, which is good for any of our existing customers because it means you don't need to buy additional software. So with that, I'd like to get right into the wireless sensor network product family. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we call this product our HOBO ZW series of data loggers. The Z in the name relates to a proprietary implementation of the ZigBee protocol. If you're familiar with the ZigBee protocol, which is a very common wireless protocol used in building management, you know that the properties of this technology allow for a self-healing network. Our solution is scalable up to 100 nodes per network, and that means that you only need one receiver communicating with 100 different nodes throughout your building. Again, there's no manual data offload because the nodes are able to communicate back to a central receiver located that's connected to a PC. We understand that data is of the utmost importance, so we offer a robust performance by including onboard buffer memory on each of the nodes and battery backup on anything that has AC power supplied to a node or a router. Scott's going to take you through a few examples of how to set up alarms and how to manage your system through HOBO Pro. We understand that in a building there are constantly evolving infrastructures. So the solution is built to enable a very robust solution for the changing properties of a building. And that's what I want to walk you through in a few examples. You might be wondering at this point how our ZW system can help you in your building. So I wanted to start off by describing a few examples of the way customers have implemented these solutions in their buildings today. A very common application is storage monitoring, where you have food or process controls that you want to make sure are kept at a certain temperature or relative humidity. This is a great application for the ZW nodes. Indoor environmental quality monitoring is another great example, where you have various floors of a building and different comfort complaints coming from the occupants of the building. You want to keep close tabs on the temperature, relative humidity, or even CO2 levels in the various areas of your building. Duct pressure monitoring is another common application for considering HVAC performance and monitoring the pressures that are moving through the ducts in your building. We've had a lot of applications for whole building use energy monitoring, where you're applying a ZW node to monitor the kilowatt hours at a single control electrical panel in your building. But there's also a great application for using it in sub-panel power monitoring, where you have critical pieces of process equipment or other types of sub-panels that you want to keep track of. I'm going to walk you through an example of that with a lighting power use application towards the end of the presentation. But that's another example of sub-panel power monitoring, where you may be able to monitor the circuit panel that supplies electricity to certain lights in order to track the energy use of very specific pieces of equipment. And finally, boiler or chiller performance monitoring is a great example, because we all know how much that the boilers and chillers in our buildings can consume for energy. And with temperature and relative humidity measurements, you can keep track of whether or not your boilers and chillers are operating effectively. Before we get into the next couple of slides, I'm going to be using these symbols you see on this slide from time to time throughout the presentation. So I just wanted to make sure that the terminology was clear as we move into the next set of slides. The first picture here is of a data node. That's the green hexagon with the orange, yellowish-orange triangle pointing out. That symbol represents a data node, which is a component in the system that is capturing measurement information and forwarding it off to another component in the system. The next symbol is a router. That's represented by the hexagon with the two white triangles pointing out of it. This is the component that gathers information from the data nodes, the measurements, and forwards them off to the next component in the system. The final symbol you'll see used throughout the next couple of slides is the symbol with the green hexagon and the USB symbol. That's the receiver, which has to be hardwired to a PC on site for the system to work. Just to walk you through a few more details about these components, the data node records the data measured by internal and external sensors. We have data nodes with both varieties of types of sensors that you can plug in. The data nodes are battery powered for about a year at a 15-minute logging interval. That battery life can actually expand if you have longer logging intervals. When you see a hexagon with two orange triangles pointing out of it, that symbolizes a dual-purpose data node that's also being used in router mode. The way that you achieve that kind of component is simply by taking a data node and providing it with AC power. And I'm going to talk more about why you might want to do that as we move through the next couple of slides. The router is the device that provides the connectivity to the other nodes. You can think of them like range extenders that help you expand the reach of your wireless network. They're always AC powered with battery backup, and they can be used either as dedicated routers or as the data nodes acting as data/router nodes that I just described. The receiver is the central hub that collects and stores the information. It's the bridge between the network and the software. It stores the network information and it sends the commands to the nodes. The receiver has to be AC powered, or it can be USB powered with battery backup. And again, it's connected to a PC that is located on site where you're doing the monitoring. This next slide, I'm not going to read through all of these examples, but this slide highlights all of the different ZW measurements. The measurements cover a broad range of the types of things that you're going to want to look at in your building, including environmental, energy and power, and other types of signals. The others column is an important one for you to make note of, because if you don't see the kind of measurement that you want to make in your building in the other two columns, you should know that our nodes are enabled with a port that would allow you to plug in any kind of analog sensor to the node to collect your information. That includes a 4 to 20 milliamp signal, a pulse signal, or a 0 to 10 volt signal. At the bottom of the slide, you see some pictures of the various nodes that we offer in our product line. I'm going to go into those in more detail in a later slide, but just know that there's models available with internal sensors built right into the node that include temperature and relative humidity. And there's also models that allow for these external sensors to be plugged into each of the nodes. The other thing to note is that each of these ZW nodes can support up to 4 different measurements with these internal and external sensors. So that allows you to capitalize to get the most out of your ZW system. So without being together physically today, I wanted to be able to depict for you how a ZW system would get set up. Scott's going to walk you through the exact software setup, but this is a picture representation of how you might best leverage the components in your wireless data logging system. You're going to start off with a PC on your site connected to a receiver. And again, this is a hardwired connection represented by this black line. And then to begin your monitoring, you'll drop in a couple of data nodes into your building. The red lines that connect back to the receiver are showing you the transmission pattern of the data. So as you can see, because of the proximity of these first two nodes, they're able to easily communicate directly back to the receiver. But as you grow your network, you're going to want to consider adding routers to allow for the data transmission to get through things like larger walls or other obstacles that may be located in your building. In this last couple of nodes that we've placed, you'll see that we've added a couple of routers. In this case, the router is also collecting measurement information, which is depicted by the double orange arrow. But in this case, you've added just a router that's not doing any measurement capability. Either way is a good option for increasing the signal strength of your system. We're going to continue building on this system by adding a couple of other sensors. You see this one down in the lower left corner is located in a place where the obstruction is not allowing it to communicate with any other routers in the network so far. So to build a system here, we'll place a single router down in this location, and that allows us to continue to build out into these lower corners of the building. But we all know that buildings don't stay as is forever. And so when someone comes along and builds a big concrete wall or places a large metal filing cabinet right in the path of your ZW system, with a strong backbone of routers, you can rest assured that the signal is still going to get back to the receiver. So in this example, you see we placed this obstruction, and it allowed this, because we had a router located in proximity to this node here, it allowed it to reroute its transmission signal to still get the information back to the receiver. So that's how the centralized data collection works to be a scalable and self-healing network. I hope you've seen that you can collect high accuracy data through a wide range of measurements, and that our system is going to help you make sure you get your data by providing buffer memory and battery backup. These are all important things to consider when looking at wireless data logging solutions. Now I'd like to have Scott walk you through the advanced supporting software, and he's also going to give you a few examples of how to do remote alarms and the flexible data delivery options that you can consider when implementing a ZW system. And so at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to Scott.
Hello everybody, my name is Scott Ellen. We're going to now flip over to HOBOware, which is our main program. in terms of HOBOware and the different versions that you have, if you upgrade to the latest version, which is 3.2.1, but if you happen to have 3.0, this feature will actually be built into HOBOware. So the first thing you want to do is obviously start HOBOware and then come up to Device and go down to Manage HOBO Data Node Network. What this is going to do is start HOBO Node Manager. And if it's the first time, like it's doing right here, sometimes it takes a minute. What it's doing is it's creating a database where all of this information is going to be written to. And it just takes a second here. And what we're going to do is once the database is written to and HOBO Node Manager comes up, there we go. As you can see, we now have a blank screen. It's going to take just a second for what we call the receiver to be recognized. I do have it connected to the computer through the USB cable. Now from here, as you can see, you've been prompted, do you want to form your network? So we're going to go ahead and form our network now. And so what happens is that the receiver goes into a red blink back and forth pattern. And what I'm going to do here is push some of the buttons on the nodes themselves. They will then start communicating. Bear with me here just a second. And momentarily, we're going to have a couple nodes that will start showing up. So as you can see, we have 2 nodes here, and we'll bring one more on here. Hopefully. So as you can see, it just takes a little second here. And so we're going to stop forming our network. So very easy. Obviously, I'm within close distance right here, but as you build your network, you obviously want to work from the computer where the receiver is and build out to some of the other points. So in cases where you may need routers, or again, if you have the DWs plugged in to AC power, they work both as a data node and a repeater. So just taking a little bit of a tour through the HOBO Node Manager software, as you can see, we're already getting some readings coming in. So what I'm going to do is come over to the plot button here and click on that. And what we'll see here is now we're going to start to add some graphs. Basically, we have the logger set up so it's recording every minute and it's transmitting every 2 minutes. And what I'll do is just bring these all on here. And in another minute or so, we'll start seeing some data coming in. Now, there's some maintenance that you'll want to do within this table here. Some things like naming your different measurements. So you can easily come over here and double-click on the label, and then you can name it. It's really kind of important for when you go to manage your data afterwards. So we're going to do the first one here. Basically, all I'm doing is just typing in and hitting enter, and that information automatically gets saved to the database. Now, as you can see, the 2 bottom nodes, the ZW003s, they have built-in sensors, where the ZW005 has a temperature and humidity probe, so it's about an 8-foot-long probe. And then there's 2 ports where if you want to plug in an additional sensor. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is set this up. Basically, you double-click, and it's going to open up a window. From here, you're able to select from a drop-down menu of all the different types of sensors that we offer. So we'll just, let's say we have a CO2 sensor connected. Again, we can give it a label. And then we just hit OK. And what happens is the information then gets written to the database. As you can see, on this line right here, we now have it configured for our Telair CO2 sensor. And next time this goes to take a reading, it's going to start picking up information off that, and we'll create the plot here. So just there's a couple things in terms of this plot screen that you can take a look at. You can group your sensors by measurement. You can group the readings by sensor. I kind of like the measurement personally. And then when you look at this, we can get into this maybe in a little more detail later once we've got some information. But you can look at the past 4 hours, the past day, the past week, and the past month. We're going to go back to the 4-hour view, and as you can see over here, we've started to get some information coming in. The next part of this is what we call a map view. So sometimes it's nice to be able to look and see where your data nodes are located. So what we can do first of all is I'll click on the map feature down here in the device table. And this will now, I can click anywhere and it'll go ahead and drop it in. And what I'll do is just add in some of the other ones here real quickly. It also shows you the paths that they communicate. So if you have routers out there, which I don't in this particular network, you'll see these in terms of how they communicate to get back home. And one of the things you can do is, obviously everybody's building doesn't look like a big hobo here. So you can put in your own image by coming over here and clicking on the configuration. What I do have is a JPEG file of our building here at Onset. And I'm going to go ahead and load in the image and hit OK. So, and to be a little more precise, we are actually standing right here, and we've got our data nodes kind of spread around what we call our conference room 3 in here. So as you can see, you can start to position this, and it makes a little more sense in terms of it gives it more of a realistic appearance here. There was a question earlier in terms of if you need to change parameters, do you need to be plugged into this? No, you don't. The information gets sent downstream, as you saw as we brought the CO2 sensor on. It may take a minute or two, and sometimes if you're down a couple routers, it may take a bit to get that information to get down there. But you can configure these and change everything wirelessly just from sitting at your PC, and the information will get out there. Now, one of the other things that we have in here is also our alarms tab, which you can get to that a couple different ways. One is clicking up top, and the other is just on the alarm here. If you were to come in and click here, you can now set an alarm for, let's say, for temperature. You can go above, below, or outside of a range. So we'll just put in 75 degrees, let's say. You can create an action. So what happens when you get an alarm? So you can receive an email, you can receive a text message, you can receive a visual or an audible alarm. So we'll just set it up for visual for right now. And then you can put a note in here. And it also will use your labels when it pops up so you can see what's going on. So what we'll do is we'll save this. Now let's say you want to have the same setting for all of your different nodes, your temperature, and it goes above. You can actually select this and then come down and go copy to all the same measurement type, and you can easily apply that across the board. So really kind of a quick way to go in and add alarms for all the different features here. So now that we're looking at this and we've got some data streaming in here, let's flip back over to our plots. So we've got a little bit of data coming in now off the 3 different nodes. So how do we view our data? We obviously have it here in front of us. What do we do when we want to look at the historical data? So we come down and we click on Plot Export Data. What this does, really it allows you to combine and mix and match. Similar with the standalone data loggers, essentially you would download a bunch of different data files, and then you'd have to either combine those within HOBOware Pro or Excel. What we're doing here is basically kind of running a query against the database. So the first thing that we want to do is select which nodes we want to get information from. So we'll just check those here. And then we want to look at our time frame. So we have a couple presets. So if you want to get all the data for the past hour or the past day, we'll just select it for the past day since there isn't a lot. From here, this is where you start to say, okay, let's say I want to get all my temperature. These are all sortable fields here. And as you can see, this is where it's really important to label your information. Obviously, I didn't take the time to do everything here. But what we'll do is we'll just take the temperature ones, for example, and we click the down arrow. Now, before we get out of this screen and we either export or plot the information, what we're going to want to do is save this setting. And this leads us into some of the data delivery modes, which I'll touch on here in just a little bit. So we come down and we save this, and we'll go ZW demo. And you hit the Enter key, and that's going to save that. So let's take a look at our temperature data. Let's plot it. So using HOBOware. So this is your standard plot setup screen for HOBOware. We hit plot, and let me get over to HOBOware. So we have a lot of really exciting data here, as you can see, with us just standing here in the conference room for the past few minutes. But easily, you can get your information in HOBOware and then use the tools that we have here to be able to do further analysis. Now, the one thing that I do like to point out is that you will have to save this as what we call a project file, since it's being pulled out of a database and you don't have the .hobo files. And of course, you can export this from right here if you choose as well. The other feature, and we'll just pop back over to here, is now we've saved that initial setting. So now we'll go to load setting, and we'll come down to the ZW demo. And it's going to bring all my information in here before. Well, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. And now we want to include everything. And now I hit export. We want to bring this into a CSV file, which can be read by Excel or some other program that reads comma delimited files. So we'll just save that real quick. And just to give you an example, so here's an example of your data, comma delimited. Can very quickly and easily get this information into an Excel file. All right, a couple more features here to show you within HOBO Node Manager. And some of this is the preferences and also the data delivery modes. So we're going to come down to the bottom right-hand side and click on the actions and then go Edit HOBO Data Node Preferences. The first one that comes open is your general screen. Your logging interval defaults to 1 minute, and actually when you first fire this up, your connection rate is every 10 minutes. I like to see the information coming in a little quicker when we first set up a network here. You can obviously change this down the road. One of the other features I like to put in here too is actually check Start HOBO Node Manager when HOBOware starts up. So it'll automatically connect to the database and bring this right up. Now there's some settings here for your alarms. As we talked about, you can receive emails or text messages. This is where you may have to talk to your IT people to get the SMTP setting. They'll actually know what that means. If not, what I've done is used my Gmail account, and there's a quick way to find out what those settings are actually. And I did a quick search for Google email settings, and it pops right up. And basically, you have other ways to access Gmail. And as we scroll down, it gives us all the information here. We're using an SSL port and all that sort of good stuff. So it's giving us everything there. So basically, we copy that over, and then you just use your username and password to essentially set that up. Now, you can also create a default action. So every time you set an alarm, you could have an email or a text message happen right away. So that's kind of, it's handy if you're going to be setting a lot of alarms on the system. Taking a look at the other preference here, There's a cap at 20 different sensor plots that you can see. You can change this to however many you have coming in, and actually you can enable the month mode as well. That's not something that happens by default because when you are plotting that much data in the month mode, it can potentially slow down your system just a little. So keep that in mind there. Data storage. This is where the database is located on your computer. And finally, we get into sharing and some of the data delivery options that I was talking about here. We have a couple different ways to get your information. So you can, again, as long as your computer is set up to an internet connection, you can have the information emailed to you, let's say every hour. And this is where those saved settings come into play. So we did the VW demo, which has all of our temperature information. And basically, I'm going to get that emailed to me once an hour. You can do it daily. You can do it every 2 minutes, every minute if you want, but you fill up your inbox quite quickly. You can also send this out to an FTP site. Now, I don't actually have an example of this here, but you can come in and put in all of your information. You test the FTP connection, and then you can start storing the CSV files there. And then finally, somewhere on your network drive, so let's say you want to send the information where your coworkers can see it. So we have a drive here that essentially we can put it out onto our network, and it will then start storing the CSV files out there. The other option that we have here is something called a HOBO Node Viewer. And I recommend reading this paragraph. I'm not going to read it word for word. But essentially what we're doing here is we're turning your computer into a web server where people within the local area network at your company can basically have a view-only mode of the HOBO Node Manager, essentially. So keep in mind this does not get you out to the internet because your IT people would go nuts if they have to open up a firewall or something like that. But what we'll do is just go through and enable this here. Now what I do have to do is actually restart HOBO Node Manager in order for this setting to take here. So I'm just going to close out of this real quick. And then we come back to HOBOware. As you can see, it now says starting web server. And we'll go back into our preferences here by clicking on the action. And now if we come down and you click on this link, this is a link that you can send to people within your company. And what it's going to do is open up a window view here. So now what you have is a view only. So you can send this out to your coworkers. You can manage this very similar to what you can do in the manager itself. You can see the day and the week and support it, and it has the map mode here. So there's a bunch of different options that you can do here, and actually once the data delivery starts happening, people can actually download the CSV files from right here too. So you know, if your manager or an executive wants to be able to look at this information periodically, this might be a good option to set up here. And finally, before I finish up on this part of things here, let me just close out. You don't need to keep HOBOware and HOBO Node Manager running all the time. What I'm going to do is close HOBO Node Manager and then come up and exit or quit out of HOBOware Pro. Save that. But it said, would you like to keep HOBO Node Manager running in the background? For right now, what I'm going to do is hit yes. And as we can see, hopefully down here in the icon tray, it gives you a couple different options to connect to the receiver, start HOBO Node Manager, or stop the device communication. And actually what I'm going to do is shut that down completely. And we'll switch back over to our presentation here. And we're right back at the beginning. Sorry about that. Pick up where we left off. So just to go over this real quickly, these are some of the capabilities that the HOBO Node Manager can do. We are, in terms of compatibility, sorry about that, HOBOware is compatible on the Macintosh platform with the latest operating system that just came out a couple weeks ago. It's compatible with Windows XP, with Windows 7. So there is some information on our website there to do that, but we are compatible there. Again, this is a little more complicated view in terms of a larger network. If we have some questions here afterwards, I have another network that I can bring up beyond just these 3 nodes that we can take a quick look at. And again, some of the alarming capabilities and the automated data delivery. So I'm going to turn this back over to Jessica now, and we'll take a look at some of the pricing information.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And so now you're all probably sitting wondering how much the investment to get to wireless data logging is going to cost you. All of our information on pricing and part numbers is available on the web at onsetcomp.com. But just quickly, I wanted to show you an example of the range of nodes that we offer with the ZW system. You'll see everything from a single integrated temperature sensor node at $159 up to a multi-port node that includes an external temperature and relative humidity sensor, as well as 2 analog ports that could cost as much as $289 for a single node. Remember, you're going to need the receiver for sure to get going with your system, and then the routers are options if you want to extend the range and strength of your system. So if we flash back to the illustration example that I walked you through earlier in the presentation, just to give you a sense of a full system cost, we start off with a receiver and a single temperature and relative humidity node, and that basic system will cost about $400. If we expand and include various node options with each of the illustrations that I had walked through before, you could be looking at a system cost somewhere around the $2,000 mark for all of the nodes, without sensors included, but with the software included. It's important to tell you that our receivers come with software free of charge. So hopefully at this point you understand a lot about the ZW system, its features, and all of its components. But I wanted to also walk you through a few examples of how our customers are using this in specific applications. This application shows a 6-month energy efficiency study at a recently constructed 800,000 square foot federal facility. This facility had put in over $1 million investment to replace the lights for more energy efficient lighting. And they had 10 lighting panels where AC current was supplied to the various sets of lights. They installed CTVs, our current transformers, transducers, inside these sub-panels in order to monitor the energy flow to each of those panels. They also were monitoring for temperature and relative humidity points. As you can see from the lower picture, this is a really large facility with a lot of headroom towards the ceiling. So they mounted the ZW nodes at a 13-foot height, and they were actually able to achieve the 300-foot range between the nodes. Our specification on this system is 300 feet line of sight, but obviously in a building a lot of obstacles can get in your way, so you have to be very conscious of that range. We learned by mounting the nodes at a high level, they were able to avoid a lot of the traffic that happens at the lower level in the building. So we've actually suggested this to other customers as a best practice. This facility plans to continue to expand their ZW network by adding some components that will allow them to monitor the HVAC system in the facility. Another fun example is at a robotic storage facility. This is located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where they have an ultra-modern, high-tech storage facility using a 70-ton robotic crane that's able to access various exotic vehicles and rare paintings, historic documents, vintage wine, other very precious and climate-sensitive items are stored in this facility. The ZW system itself was installed to monitor real-time changes in the temperature and relative humidity inside the facility without having to have a person enter the vault. This is extremely important to this facility because of the robotic crane being a little bit of a safety hazard when people are around it. The monitoring of temperature and relative humidity allows the facility operators to maintain climatic conditions to make sure that they are conducive to storing these rare and valuable items they keep at the facility. The fact that no one has to enter the facility in order to access information about the temperature and relative humidity allows them to keep the facility operating all the time without disruption to the robotic activity. With that, I'd just like to summarize by saying, as you think about moving to a wireless data logging solution, consider the idea of the benefits of not having to retrieve your data by having centralized data collection. You should also think about how scalable you want your wireless data logging system and the idea of having a self-healing network, particularly in a dynamically changing building. You should consider robust performance and think about how you might want to use alarms and remote data access. And I hope that you've learned something today, and at this point we'd like to take some questions that have come in throughout the webinar. Thanks. Wanted to remind you before we take some questions that there are resources are available at youtube.com/HOBO data loggers. So this presentation, along with other resources that we've offered in the past, are available there. And I also wanted to leave this slide up when we go into the question and answer session so that if you have any questions about this webinar, you have mine and Scott's contact information. And also, if you have any general product questions, feel free to contact our tech support team who's here from 8 to 8 Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, and at the information provided on the slide. Or if to speak to a product application specialist, we've given you the contact information there, sales@onsetcomp.com. So with that, Scott and I are going to take a few of these questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple questions coming in, and one that seems kind of interesting is, are there any health concerns over the wireless? And that's actually an excellent question. We're using the Zigbee technology is based around Wi-Fi. So if you have Wi-Fi out there, there shouldn't be any concerns. I haven't heard of any health risks out there. So we should be all set there. There's another question in terms of what type of relative humidity sensor are we using in here. Is it capacitive or resistive? I'm not exactly sure. I can tell you that the sensor is made by a company called Sensorion, and it's electronic calibrated type sensor. That is something that we can take a look at in further detail. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to bring up HOBO Node Manager here with one of the larger networks that I have going. So you can take a quick view. Bear with me here just 1 second as all the information comes back into play. But what I have going on here, and I'm going to flip over to the map view, which is the easiest way to show this for you. And we're going to field a couple more. We've got a bunch of questions, so we're going to try to get to everybody here, and some of it's software related. So what I've got going on here is a couple of the folks in our marketing bay are complaining that they're too hot or too cold. So what we've done is we've put nodes all over the place, some recording temperature and humidity, and then actually down towards the bottom we're recording kilowatt-hour usage. So as you can see, we do have some routers. We do have some that are battery operated. And these guys, they really kind of find the best path home, which is really weird that this one is actually talking all the way back here rather than to the receiver. But wireless can be kind of funky like that. there was a question in terms of what takes a node into a router. In order to make something a router, you want to have that AC powered when you first power it up, and then put the batteries in for a backup.
There's also a question about the YouTube site.
Oh, yeah, YouTube. YouTube.com/HOBO data loggers, plural. So that's where we have a lot of tutorials and other types of videos up there. There was also a question in terms of can we switch back and forth between centigrade and Fahrenheit. You can do that, and that's actually something I believe that we set actually in the preferences. One of the things that I like to point out to a lot of folks is we do have a lot of information that is in our preferences here. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where that is off the top of my head. But yes, you do have the ability to switch back and forth between centigrade and Fahrenheit. We do have another question in terms of if you're using an air velocity sensor, how do you set this to get it to CFM? And this is something actually. Anytime that you have a sensor that gives an output of, let's say, 4 to 20 milliamps, and it's a sensor that we don't offer directly, you use one of our input cables. So let's say, for example, it did have a 4 to 20 milliamp output. There's a configure screen here where you set your scaling. So when you come in and we'll just change this real quick. Change that to CFM, and then let's say it goes 0 to whatever 5,000, and you hit OK. And now what that's going to do is save the information, save that scaling information, so we can get out of the engineering units. And now that's being stored to the database. So you can see the type of cable that you have connected up to it, and then you have your scaling information here. And next time the first reading's taken, you'll actually get your measurements in CFM.
We went a little bit over, but we're just going to take a couple more questions here. There was one that came in. What type of cabling, if any, is required between the router and the receiver? Great question. There is no cabling required between the router and the receiver, so the routers are able to talk directly back to the receiver. The receiver is connected by a USB cable to the PC. That's the only cable required.
And what type of batteries do we use? That's actually an excellent question. When these are battery operated, so when they're just working as a node and not a repeater, we use 3 standard AAA batteries, and basically it's spec'd out at a 15-minute recording interval. It can last for about a year in the field. And of course, you can set up alarm settings here too for your battery. And actually, I did not touch on the system alarm. So you have your system alarm here. So if any of your nodes are battery operated and have a low setting, you can come in and adjust that. And essentially what will happen, which it looks like I do have a couple out here that are getting kind of low. This particular one here is an excellent example. It actually says I'm at 0. So I'm going to need to change that one. Well, they're not waterproof. Yeah, the question is can they be installed outside? Technically, no. But we've seen folks that have done that. They've put it into a weatherproof enclosure, and then had essentially, that would be a battery-operated node, and then had a router or a repeater within earshot of that to be able to get the information back inside. Yes, you can get, do we offer a 30-day trial? We certainly do. You go to our website, which is onsetcomps.com. And essentially we click on software, where is it? Products, software. And you can download a free trial. This is good for both Mac and Windows, so you can take it for a test drive. Another question is, do you have to pay? Is there any additional fees in terms of the emailing and all this data delivery stuff? No, it's not. It's a part of HOBOware. HOBOware actually is included in the cost of your receiver, which is $199. And then from there, it's just basically all set up on your network. It is your data. It's not our data. So there are no additional fees there. Yeah, great question. Can we monitor power with CTs? We have a number of different options that you can either, CTs or current transformers to measure amperage. And yeah, you certainly can. You can plug that into what we call the analog port on the DW itself, which let me just come back up to some of our nodes here. So taking a look at this, we have a couple different flavors where we have the DW006, which takes 4 analog inputs. So technically, you could plug in up to 4 current transformers there. Our DW008 takes pulse inputs. So you can actually plug in, if you have a watt node kilowatt-hour transducer or our Veris E50 V2 power meter, you can take the pulses, or even off of a flow sensor, you can take the pulses off of that and record that information as well. So as you can see, we have the integrated sensors that have the built-in temp and temperature and humidity, and then we give you some flexibility with both the analog and pulse inputs to connect up the different sensors. Okay, I got one last question here, and then we're going to kind of wrap this thing up here. And actually, it's an excellent question, is can we communicate through a refrigerator or a freezer if this is located inside? I've tested it. I couldn't. A lot of times what we see is people use the probe versions of this, where you have the DW006 or the 007 that has a temperature and humidity probe. And essentially, you drill a hole and run the probe to the inside, and you keep the data node on the outside. Now, with that being said, it didn't work in my application, but we have had other folks that you know, essentially put a router right on the outside. So there's a chance that may work. But again, sometimes wireless can be a little funky, and sometimes you need to kind of just try it and see. You know, obviously putting it inside of a steel container, you know, it can be a little tough. So, and finally, I promise this is the last question this time. So thank you again for everybody for sticking around here. Is a PC required? Yes, a PC is required at this point. You do have to have the receiver plugged into the USB port, running HOBOware and the HOBO Node Manager. We're hoping in the future to have something that would replace the PC and potentially give you a little more flexibility in terms of how you're going to get your data. But yes, at this point it is connected to your PC, whether that's Windows, Macintosh, all that sort of good stuff.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully the webinar today met your expectations. We didn't get to a few questions, so we will definitely be following up with some emails to you, and we'll also publish the questions and the answer session about a week or so after the webinar. Yeah,
there will be a follow-up to everybody who attended, and there'll also be a link to the YouTube site where you can hear this presentation again, and we'll include everybody's questions in the follow-up email. So, thank you again.